Hi everyone and welcome to our channel. For those of you visiting us again, welcome back. We appreciate your support and comments so much. For those of you who are new to our channel, please go below and subscribe. Hit the like button, send us your comments so we can know what you'd like to hear about in future videos. Hit notifications so you'll be notified of future videos, and visit our website listed down below, www.cosmetologystateboardexam.com. For those of you with the book, this would be a good time to pull it out. For those of you who went to a school that didn't use books and was all digital, this would be a good time to find a piece of paper and a pad to take some notes. Don't worry, we'll wait. Okay, to briefly point out something I've said in the past to those of you who've been with us before, the State Board exam uses two textbooks. One from a lady, one from a competitor company called Salon Fundamentals. I neither endorse nor put down either of these textbooks. They're both excellent textbooks. They have their strengths and weaknesses. Some are better in one chapter than in others. Okay? The problem on the State Board test is they do not all say the same thing. And sometimes they actually say contradictory things. One simple example, the definition of the word porosity. One book says it is the ability to absorb moisture. The other book says it is the ability to absorb liquids. Now, of course, I think you can make a good case and a judge that liquids are moisture, but that's not the point. You're not a lawyer, you're not arguing your point in a courtroom to a judge. You're taking a test with multiple choice answers, A, B, C, and D. You need to know what the answer is. Therefore, you need to know both definitions. And there are several examples of this through the books, which is why I highly recommend getting our book to prepare for your test, because all our book gives you is test questions. There'll be 12 practice exams for estheticians. Each one has 100 questions. Gives you the question, 4 possible answer choices, and then the correct answer. And you will see the same question asked over and over and over, simply reworded. Because this is what the State Board examiners do. They can't make up new facts. All they can do is make up new ways to ask the same old facts, and they do it really, really well. Complementary colors is my favorite example. What are they? They're located opposite on the color wheel. What do? They cancel and neutralize each other. There's so many questions here on this simple topic. Okay? We're going to follow the Milady textbook, not because I prefer it to Salon Fundamentals, but because it's more commonly used in schools. In the Milady textbook, there are 23 chapters. The first 4 are not tested. Perhaps they should be. They're the history of our industry, but they're not. Likewise, the last 3 chapters, they're not tested. Perhaps they should be. It's what you should do to get yourself in business after you pass the test. But at this point, they're not tested. So we're going to focus on the chapters that are tested, specifically chapters 5, 6, and 11. If you saw our prior video number 5 on chapter 5, infection control, you know that that one chapter is 35% of your test. In combination with chapters 6 and 11, it is 60% of your test. As I said before, and I'll probably get in trouble, a person could probably pass their test just reading those 3 chapters if they really understood them well. Which brings me to another point for continuing. Most of you are familiar with this book. Those of you watching closely will observe this is in Spanish. It makes no difference, it's also available in English. Almost every student has this book. Almost every student uses this book to study. And almost every student who fails their test will tell you there was almost nothing in this book on the exam. And that is a true statement. There's a lot of tremendously valuable information in this book once you pass your test. But in terms of preparing for the exam, this book is just not going to do it. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's move now to chapter 6, the second most heavily tested. In my book, it's chapter 6. It's called General Anatomy and Physiology. If you have a different edition of the Milady book, it might be a different chapter. And if you have the Pivot Point or a Salon Fundamentals book, it's almost inevitably a different chapter. It doesn't change what it is. It's still General Anatomy and Physiology, the second most heavily tested topic on the test. Now, exactly what will they ask you about anatomy and physiology? Well, they'll probably ask you the definitions. Anatomy. Your book gives a rather detailed explanation on page 118, 148, 142, and 155. And one thing I've told my students over the years, when you see anything that appears on 3 or 4 or more pages in your textbook, this is a red flag. It will be on your exam. Now, it defines anatomy as, I'm going to read it, I want to make sure I get it word for word correct, because this is how it will appear on your test. Anatomy is the structures of the human body that can be seen with the naked eye. You look right at it and you see it. Eyes, hair, nose, feet, hands, arms. The next one is histology, sometimes known as microscopic anatomy, which I think is a much more descriptive name for it. It is the study of the tiny structures within living tissues. Structures so small they cannot be seen with the naked eye. Think of blood, for example. We all know what blood looks like. It's red. What we cannot see is what's inside the blood, the red corpuscles, the white corpuscles, the platelets, etc. This is histology, or microscopic anatomy, the study of structures so small they cannot be seen with the naked eye. And finally is physiology, the study of the functions and activities carried out by different organisms of the body. You need to be extremely familiar with these terms, anatomy, histology, and physiology. Once again, they will not ask you to fill in the blanks on your test and give these definitions. They will expect you to know them because they will be frequently given as test answers. You must recognize it when you see it. Another word I've talked about repeatedly, organelles, O-R-G-A-N-E-L-L-E-S. In your book, it's on page 119, 155, and 745. It's cells. Organelles are specialized subunits within a cell with specific functions. When you see the word organelles, do not look up at the ceiling for the answer because it is not there. Okay? It is a specialized subunit within a cell. Now, another heavily tested area on your test out of chapter 6 is bones, specifically the facial bones and the bones here of the chest and neck area, not below that. Okay? Your book tells you on page 123 that there are 22 bones in your head. There are 14 in the back and 8 in your face. The only bone of the skull that I see tested for estheticians is the cranium. It is the oval, bony case protecting your brain. If you've got the cranium, you're probably good to go on the whole head. Barbers and cosmetologists are tested much more heavily because they cut hair and they need to know these things. As an esthetician, you can probably get by with just knowing the cranium, the oval, bony case that protects the brain. The 8 bones of the face. These tend to be much more heavily tested. Specifically 3. The lacrimal bone, which is the small, thin bone here at the inner corner of the orbit. The orbit's a nice fancy medical term meaning your eye socket. The small, thin bone here at the inner corner in front of your tear duct is called the lacrimal bone. The other bone they like is the zygomatic bone, otherwise known as your cheekbone. If you're doing makeup, I wouldn't suggest mentioning to your client that he or she has great zygomatic bones. They won't know what you're talking about. Cheekbones, but they're called zygomatic on your state board exam. And finally, the one that will probably get you in trouble is the mandible, the lower jawbone. There are 2 jawbones, the upper jawbone called the maxillae, the lower called the mandible. Now, the reason I say get you into trouble is they could ask you what is the largest bone of the face. The answer is mandible. They could ask you what is the lowest bone in the face. The answer is mandible. They could ask you what is the only movable bone in the face. The answer is mandible. But they could also take out the word mandible and say lower jawbone. Okay? So you have at least 6 or 7 variations of a question they could ask you about jawbone, and they will ask you at least one of them. I can assure you of this. Okay, moving past there, okay, you have muscles of the chest. Bones of the chest. There are 5. They are not heavily tested. I would look at page 125 for a few minutes. You're probably good to go. What is more heavily tested is the muscles of the neck. Page 128 in your textbook defines this pretty well. There are 2, and neither one is easy to say. There's the platysma, and there is the sternocleidomastoid. Now, if you can say that word, I should give you a license. emphasis on they probably should. They won't, but they probably should, just because you can actually say it and spell it, okay? It allows you to turn your head from side to side. In the hand, on page 131, there are several terms you need to be familiar with. There's the pronator and the supinator. The pronator allows you to turn your hand down, like a pro basketball player. The supinator allows you to turn it up, like a waiter or waitress serving soup. Pronator, supinator. Their favorite question is, where are these muscles located? You would be inclined to think, well, probably in your hand. That's what I thought back 1,000 years ago when I took my test. I was wrong. They are located here in the forearm, the area between your wrist and your elbow. The muscles that turn your palm upward, supinator, and turn your hand downward, pronator, are located in the forearm. The other muscles you'll need to know are the abductor and the adductor. The abductor allows you to separate your fingers like this. The word abduct, like if you have a child abducted, they take your child away, right? Abductor. The muscle bringing it together is the adductor. These words are only separated by one letter. Abductor with the B, adductor with the D, and yet they couldn't be more different. You'll need to know them both. Okay? Finally is the heart and circulatory system. Now, the state board is a little all over the board on this issue. And I say all over the board for this reason. On one day, there'll be 10 questions. On the next, there'll be no questions. You can't count on being in the next day with no questions. You should plan for the worst and hope for the best. Planning for the worst means you'll know about the heart and the circulatory system. Okay? This is the final topic in chapter 6. Okay? It is sometimes referred to as the body's pump, because it has really only one function until the day you die, is to pump the blood through your body. Okay? It doesn't oxygenate the blood, that's your lungs. Lungs oxygen, they oxygenate the blood. It doesn't filter your blood, that's your kidneys and your liver. It does one thing till the day you die. It pumps the blood. Hence the term the body's pump. The heart is divided into 4 chambers. We would call it in English rooms. Okay? If you've been in court, the judge has his or her chambers, that's their private room. There are 4 chambers. Imagining your heart looks like a Hallmark moment on Valentine's Day. It actually doesn't, but we know this shape. The 2 top thin wall chambers are called atrium. The 2 bottom thick wall chambers are called ventricles, like the letter V. Atrium, ventricles. There are arteries, capillaries, and veins. In that order, A, C, V. It's alphabetically. Biggest arteries, middle is capillaries, smallest is veins. The largest artery in your body is the aorta. A-O-R-T-A on page 140 and 148. The largest artery in your body. Your body contains 8 to 10 pints of blood. You know, men usually bigger than women, people tall, people short, heavy set, very thin. There's some variation, right? But generally speaking, it's 8 to 10 pints of blood. Not quarts, not gallons, pints. Read the test question carefully at least twice to make sure you answer what they actually asked you. At the beginning of this chapter, I said this is a very difficult chapter. And it is, only because it's so heavily tested. 5, 6, and 11 are more than half of your test. Now before I get cut off, I would have mentioned, again, I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble because I'm always in trouble, but I'll risk it. This is not a particularly good book to prepare for your state board exam. Very little of the questions in this book are on the state board exam. This is a great book to prepare for your state board exam. You can get it on our website. You can find us on Amazon as well. www.cosmetologystateboardexam.com. It will give you every question asked for the last 12 months in your state. It will ask you specifically what state you're in when you order. It gives you 12 practice tests. Each one has 100 questions with the answers and the correct answer at the end. Wrapping up this, if you enjoyed this today, please hit subscribe, send us your comments, give us a phone call if you'd like to do it that way, 760-534-4434. Again, 760-534-4434. Monday through Friday, 9 till 9, Saturdays and Sundays, afternoons only. We speak both English and Spanish. We'll be happy to hear from you and answer any questions we can. Please hit subscribe, like our channel, sign up for notifications, send us your comments, and visit our website. Okay? Next video, chapter 11, which will conclude the 3 that make up most of your test. And thank you so much for your time, and have a blessed day.